The remains of the bridge that you see behind me used to carry the old LSWR railway from Friary into Turnchapel Station. Now, the station was severely bombed during the war due to enemy action, and the oil tanks on the site exploded, causing severe damage in this area. Now, with the aid of author Tony Kingdom and such organisations as TSW Archives, which have provided some very interesting movie footage for us, we're able to tell you the story of this particular railway. Now, this film is particularly important to us at Archive Film Productions for two reasons. Firstly, that it's taken something like 5 years to amass the information to put the film together, and secondly, our studios are just over there. We will also be telling in part the story of the LSWR Branch line to Plymouth Cattewater, still very much in operation today. To help to plot the journeys, we asked Hovercam Limited to send their helicopter over the existing track beds to bring us some superb aerial shots. So come now on a journey into the past. In this new century, life is hectic, and memories of the past are precious. It's the 30th of September 1961. Members of the Plymouth Railways Circle take a leisurely journey to Turnchapel and back, leaving Friary Station at 2:45 p.m, hauled by SR Class Engine M7 number 30034. This would be the last train with passengers to run from Friary through Plymstock and Oreston and into Turnchapel. Instead of ordinary passenger coaches, the lads travelled on 8 guards vans to take in the view. Goods trains continued to use the line for another 10 years until October 1961, and in 1963 the dismantling of the branch began, thus ending 64 years of services from Plymouth to the Hoe and Turnchapel area. The Plymouth to Turnchapel Railway opened to passenger traffic on the 1st of July 1897. Its journey commenced at the former London and South Western Railway terminus at Plymouth Friary Station. It then left the main line and ventured into Lucas Terrace Holt, passing Cattewater Junction on its way to Plymstock, which acted as junction for the Yelton line. The next station was Oreston, and finally into Turnchapel, having crossed the lake at Hoe. The LSWR, that is the London and South Western Railway Company, in agreement with the South Devon Railway, constructed a goods station at Friary Green around 1878, but it was not until July of 1891 that the LSWR opened Plymouth Friary to passengers. Friary Station was so named because it was erected on the site of an old friary. It was a large self-contained complex with goods and passenger services, plus a motive power depot with its coaling, water and loco turning facilities about a half a mile east of the main terminal. The station was situated in the heart of Plymouth Centre, so allowed easy access to Plymouth's main roads. Circuses would often bring their animals and goods here, since it was within easy access of the main thoroughfares for their parades through the streets before official opening. And there was a scenery dock, where scenery for the Palace Theatre was often transported and handled. Ah, those were the days. But today, there's little sign that such a magnificent station and railway ever existed in the area, which is now dominated by superstores with their ugly tin buildings. What a contrast to the multi-arch limestone bridge carrying Tothill Road from Exeter Street to Beaumont Road. This stands as a monument to the days when this area was vibrant with railway traffic and that all-impelling smell of the smoke from the engines. By the way, I'm not really a train buff, but I think I'm getting there, especially when I greet sights like this. Trouble is, I was only 7 when this yard closed, and even though living in Plymouth all my life, I don't think I ever used Friary Station. I remember the railways were in decline when my father bought his first Ford Consul, and we seemed to go everywhere in that. I was told that during the war years, troops both dead and alive were transported from here to all parts of the country. A ship apparently sank in Plymouth Sound, and the survivors and bodies were brought here for transportation. The 2.5-mile journey to Turnchapel would normally begin on number 4 road, usually with an LSWR class 02 with 2-gate type suburban coaches. The signal drops and the train heads east to pick up the main line after passing Friary A signal box. To its right and left are Knighton Road and Desborough Road. Eastwards the train crosses the down road to join the Cattewater and Turnchapel branch line, which also gives access to the motive power depot. The 4 main lines stretch eastwards as the train climbs a single gradient passing the motive power depot, soon to slow down and rest at Lucas Terrace Halt in the heart of Prince Rock. Strange that I used to live just above this station site and never realised that it was there. Opened in 1905, Lucas Terrace Halt consisted of a long concrete platform with a precast shelter. For those who remember it, I suppose that's important, but if you didn't remember it, I don't suppose it really matters, does it? But the station was situated well above the main line and accessed by way of a steep path leading down to Lucas Terrace. Today the pedestrian underpass links Stenlake Terrace and Lanhydrock Road and stands as a reminder of the Turnchapel and Cattewater branch lines. Above this structure the roar of trains, particularly heavy during the war years, was a predominant sound to the populace. An elderly lady approached us when filming on the site and asked what we were doing. We explained and she said, "Oh, 'twere lovely in they days, boy," she said. "I remember the trains well." She was so glad that we were making a film of it. Funny, she didn't order the video. Now in the 21st century, everything has changed. On the day we took the shots of the modern site, a group of workmen were in the process of demolishing and changing the station area to make a cycleway. Vandals. We couldn't express our true feelings to them since the rail track official gave us special permission to film on the day. Butcher. Actually, trains still pass here on their way to the Cattewater line, but we'll deal with this later. From our helicopter, the track bed can be clearly observed from Lucas Terrace Halt passing just below us. Crossing Embankment Road. Cattewater Junction is just below where LSWR and GWR met on their respective journeys. Over there is the rail tunnel under LSWR Bridge leading to the Cattewater. Now we approach and stride LSWR Bridge. There's the entrance to Chelston Meadow. Now it's a straight line into Plymstock Station, hardly recognisable today. There it is in the distance, that mass of concrete surrounded by grass. Returning to Lucas Terrace Halt at ground level, the train now swings southwards on a severe curve, making the wheel flanges squeal in protest at the angle of the curve, as Tony Kingdom expressed it in his book. It passes over a bridge under which the GWR Sutton Harbour branch ran. Besides this, and running parallel, is the 4'6" gauge track of the Leamore tramway. It then crosses the bridge over the main embankment road, approaching the GWR line. Today this rather ordinary bridge is still prominent and used by goods traffic and spans one of the main thoroughfares into Plymouth from the main A38 link road across the embankment. It was renewed in 1962 to strengthen it in preparation for the bulk cement traffic that would commence in 1963. The GWR line crosses its own bridge about 50 yards further down the road, and where the two lines converge, the train enters Cattewater Junction, where the Yelpton, the Cattewater and the Turnchapel branches all meet up. It is at the Cattewater signal box that the tablet is exchanged for the next leg of the journey to Plymstock. Not much has really changed here. The line is still used for goods traffic into Cattewater, but the old track bed to Turnchapel and Yelpton is now a cycleway leading up to LSWR Bridge. Returning to our journey to Turnchapel, the train now climbs an embankment and heads towards the LSWR lattice girder bridge spanning the River Plym. This bridge is constructed in 6 sections with 5 cross-braced tubular legs. A speed restriction of 15 to 20 miles per hour allowed passengers to view both sides of the River Plym. One of the reasons for the continued existence of the bridge is the operational 4-inch medium pressure gas main strapped to its northern side. The bridge was originally built by the Earl of Morley in 1815 when he reclaimed a portion of Lara and extended the grounds of Saltram Park. He accomplished this by building an embankment to keep out the waters of the Plym and draining the reclaimed land. The train now leaves the Iron Bridge, crosses the Ride or entry into Chelston Meadow and Saltram Park until it comes to a halt at Plymstock Station. Despite serious war damage from enemy action in 1941, the platforms remained intact for the duration of their existence. The 2 platforms for the Turnchapel and Yampton lines formed a V shape toward the Plymouth end, and the original station was built in Victorian style. It possessed a gents' and ladies' toilet, a booking hall and office, a station master's office, plus a goods and parcels department. Quite a busy little station, really. The GWR platform boasted a richer exterior with an ornate canopy and glazed end panels, and on the other hand the LSWR section had no canopy at all, so passengers often sheltered on the rival section. Today the station site is totally changed. Hardly anything remains, but there are stories and memories worth relating about this junction. For instance, one passenger reported how he would travel to Yampton on the cosy GWR train and always feel superior to the LSWR rival with its wooden seats, gate doors and small engine. He would often joke that the Turnchapel train looked as if it would tip over as it stood at a steep angle, looking most queer, as he put it. In those very early days, rivalry amongst the staff of the 2 companies was often contentious, with reported sabotage and even occasional abuse resulting between LSWR and GWR employees. Down to this day, in railway social club circles, these confrontations are still referred to it, albeit in a more jocular manner, as I discovered when I visited some of the lads at Lara. But with the onset of British Rail, things apparently calmed down, and station staff were fitly united under one banner. In this rare photograph, taken in October 1961, from left to right meet driver D. Monk, light porter L. Summers, goods guard L. Jones, and relief signalman T. Easton, and not an ounce of animosity between them, so I was told. Busy posing for another rare shot is signalman J. Thomas at Plymstock Signal Box, also in 1961. After the bombings of World War II, the station changed its appearance drastically until it finally closed to passengers but continued to maintain facilities as a goods yard for many years. Here, BR Diesel 4518 arrives at Plymstock Station with a load of 12 liquid petroleum gas wagons for use in the former South West Gas's breakwater works. And later that day, the same engine departs Plymstock via Lara Bridge with the empty wagons. This study captures the shunting of cement wagons to clear a space in the sidings at Plymstock Station. Back to our helicopter now to observe the final part of the journey into Turnchapel. Below, the area of Stamps Bridge is changed beyond recognition. A superstore and fast food outlet obscures any trace of the old line. But the track bed is still clearly evident, maintained as a walkway. Passing over Oreston station site. And now finally approaching Who Lake, where the remnants of the old bridge still remain as a landmark as we saw earlier. And finally, the old station site at Turnchapel. I don't know about you, but I like to have both my feet securely on the ground, so let's land this helicopter and return to Plymstock at ground level. Down we go. Leaving the station there, the train heads towards Oreston on a steep curve, crossing a series of small bridges including a major link at Stamps Corner. Tony Pitcher, who lives adjacent to the old bridge site, reported how his father, one of the train drivers on the line, used to wave to him when he was a child as the train passed by the house.
He used to blow the whistle as he left Plymstock Station, and we'd all come rushing out, whoever was there, and of course we were all there at a young age because we moved to the house when I was only 2 years old. So from then on, whenever Dad was on that Turnchapel line, he'd always sound the whistle, and that's Dad. So out we would rush and all give him a wave, and of course then we'd wait for him to come back again from Turnchapel.
So much has changed today. Although the powers that be have preserved the old track bed as a country walkway, many visitors are unaware of the history of this line as they enjoy their walk from Pomfret to Oreston through the cuttings. Passing under the bridge leading from Oreston to Honcray, the train now enters a deep cutting emerging at the rear of Longlands Road and Oreston Station, about half a mile from Plymstock Junction. Little more than a halt, Oreston Station is 160 feet long, and for the more discerning enthusiast it was a building constructed of vertical planking covered with asbestos sheeting. A small canopy protects the entrance to the waiting room. An 11-wagon siding and loading dock is to the rear of the passenger platform belonging to F.J. Moore Limited. At this point there's a barrow crossing over the line connecting a footpath to 6 railway cottages belonging to the railway. The bridge in the distance carries Plymstock Road over the line. Leaving Oreston Station, the train now passes under the Plymstock Road Bridge. Moving forward, the train now enters another cutting and soon reaches Bailey siding, controlled by Annetts Quay from Plymstock signal box. Bailey Bartlett is a quay wood importer with the yard situated to the north of the line. Here railway sleepers are treated with creosote along with telegraph poles and other wooden structures. Today nothing remains of the Bailey Bartlett sidings, and the final approach to Turnchapel Station is totally obscured by the erection of new dwelling houses and private estates. From a short embankment and on to what can be termed as the landmark on the line, the mechanically operated bridge over Who Lake. This is a manually operated swing bridge mounted on a single support with 2 sets of latticed runouts either side of the entrance to Who Lake. The operation is controlled from Turnchapel signal box by the signalman, who walks onto the bridge to hand crank the mechanism. He must remain marooned on the bridge until it is closed again and shipping past. The bridge manoeuvred, the train now has a short journey to the passenger terminus, Turnchapel, in the heart of the Mountbatten Peninsula. And whilst passengers alight here, the line extends some 500 yards to Admiralty Wharves for loading and unloading of goods. And as we shall see later, the original station was badly damaged by German bombers during World War II. The station platform was 175 foot in length and, like Oreston, had a covered booking office and waiting room. Locals were able to visit Plymouth from here, like Joan Connell, who used to catch the train from Turnchapel to Friary, where she went to Selleck's restaurant in Ebrington Street for a famous Selleck's omelette. Once consumed, she then caught the train back home again. Visitors to Turnchapel in the early days would have enjoyed the peace and tranquility of the area, including a short walk to Jennycliff Beach, but the LSWR had serious competition from the sea. The Mountbatten Peninsula and Cattewater had a long association with transportation in the military. In 1871, before the opening of the Turnchapel Branch line, the Oreston and Turnchapel Steamboat Company was formed to ferry passengers to and from Plymouth Barbican at the bargain price of 2d for a single journey plus 1 penny for your basket. And as to competition from the railway, well, in the 1920s it was reported that on one Good Friday after a torrential downpour and thunderstorm, that queues for the ferry from Turnchapel Quay extended all the way back to Fort Stamford at the top of a steep hill just a quarter of a mile away. It is in fact on record that this ferry service claims some 10,000 passengers a day on bank holidays at a penny each. But road transport was on the increase, and with the abundance of buses to Turnchapel, the ferry service gradually declined. With the closing of the Turnchapel Railway in 1951, there was a reprieve from the Oreston Steamboat Company, with an increase in passenger trade until 1965, when the company was finally wound up, thus ending 100 years of ferry crossings to the area. Whatever mode of transport is used to visit the Turnchapel, Oreston and Mountbatten area of Plymouth, visitors cannot help but be impressed by the superb scenery and beauty of the area. Whilst new housing estates have grown up around these areas now in the 21st century, the beauty of the surrounding countryside set in the Mountbatten Peninsula has changed little, and there is the constant reminder of the old railway wherever you seem to look.
There goes another lot, sir. Looks as if poor old Plymouth's going to get it again.
Whilst Friary and Plymstock stations suffered damage during the war years, the most notable and dramatic event of wartime bombing came when the original terminus at Turnchapel was completely destroyed following an air raid on the 27th of November 1940. The RAF and Naval oil storage tanks on either side of the station were targeted. 2 bombs fell harmlessly in the lake, one on the bridge and one on an oil tank. The bomb on the bridge also damaged the signal box and buried a signalman alive. The oil tank burst into flames, the fire raging all night. And this caused panic because it lit up the area and gave German pilots opportunity to target Plymouth accurately. It was reported that the heat from the fire was so great that the water in the firemen's hoses evaporated as it left the nozzles. Then the following night, the flames ignited the other tanks. One tank boiled over, exploded, sending boiling oil in all directions. This rare German wartime aerial photograph of the scene appeared in their propaganda magazine Signal. The Turnchapel branch can be seen in the bottom left-hand corner. The oil poured in torrents over the rocks down onto the station, obliterating it in an instant. It flooded the track for 150 yards, ran onto the bridge and as far as the tunnel leading to Admiralty Wharves. Even though the channel leading into Who Lake is 100 feet wide, the burning oil crossed the lake and set fire to the timber yard on the other side. It was not until the 1st of December that the fire was finally brought under control and doused completely. But the station building had vanished, machinery crippled, and the rails forged into all kinds of weird shapes. The signal box was completely destroyed, and within 2 weeks after a hectic reconstruction programme, the station shelter was rebuilt and the lines relaid, making everything operational again. The war was unable to destroy the branch line to Turnchapel, but what the war failed to accomplish, balance sheet deficits and a helping hand from accountants made up for. By the end of October 1961, the axe had fallen and the Turnchapel branch had served its useful purpose. It was time to pack up, call the scrap merchants and demolish the line. It all ended, no ceremonies, just a handful of contractors and the noise of demolition machinery. Indeed, it was the end of an era. On the 22nd of September 1899, Plymouth Corporation introduced the first electric trams to gradually replace the horse-drawn units used since 1872. After all, it was a time of industrial change and all go-ahead towns and cities needed to be up to date. Electric power was now rivaling gas as a prime source of lighting, heating and power. I suppose you could say it was the current trend, and it was from the power station at Prince Rock, which began construction in 1898, that the electricity was generated to power the new trams, the first of which were to run along Embankment Road, Tothill Road and Ebbington Street to Drake Circus. Coal to generate power at the Prince Rock station was to be brought in by rail. And since the Cattewater Branch line opened around 1879 to 1880 by the Plymouth and Dartmoor Company as an ally of the London and South Western Railway was already well established around Lara and Cattewater Wharves, increased trade was inevitable. By 1888 the lines had been extended all the way to Victoria Pier and Deadman's Bay Quarry. From Cattewater Junction, the trains would part from the branch line to Turnchapel and enter the Cattewater passing under Lara Bridge. Onto Lara Wharves. This was the terminus of the Leamore Tramway. Past the Plymouth Corporation Electricity Works, through the Cattewater Tunnel, branching into Catdown Wharves and Shell sidings, up to Deadman's Bay Quarry and Victoria Pier. Today the line is still in operation, albeit on a limited basis, but the route cannot be described as scenic despite its proximity to the River Plym. It runs through some of the most intense commercial dockland to be found in Devon, and because of its commercial nature and the changing demands of commerce, it has changed its layout many times in the years of its presence on the Cattewater. Over the years, the largest contributor to freight traffic was the former A power station built in 1898. Whilst this was demolished around 1976, the new B power station opened in 1952, and it was still coal-fired. But with the demolition of this landmark in the 1980s, rail traffic declined even further. There were also fertiliser companies such as Gibbs, Berard, Lachenolger and Charles Lorrington, and these companies survived until recently, and with Fison's Fertilisers closing in 1981 with a loss of 120 jobs, only Conoco and Esso required rail services to and from the Cattewater. Conoco is now on skeleton staff operation in this area, so Esso's bitumen plant is the only host of diesel-hauled bitumen goods tanks twice weekly. Before the days of Conoco, Esso Petroleum used the railway to distribute their imports. Today, only bitumen is delivered to the Esso depot at Deadman's Bay Quarry. Tar and similar byproducts of oil refining have been distributed from this area for many years. Andy Rayfield of the Esso bitumen plant explains a little of the history.
Well, the history of the plant, in my understanding, is that in around between 1877 and 1885, a company called J&T Harvey's were lime and cement and plaster manufacturers. And in that time, they took over the tar distilling business, which was then, at that time, in Sutton Road, a company called Harris and Snell. And then from around 1885, or from 1879 when the railway took over, there's been a tar distillery on this site from all that time. In that time there's been various name changes, where it's gone from J&T Harvey's to Southwest Tar Distilleries in around 1923 to 1928. And then they produced tar all through the 30s and the 40s, and then that carried on to 1963, and then in 1964 Plymouth Tar Distilleries took over the name and took over the site. Then between 64 and 70 the Esso bought the site and it became the Esso bitumen plant.
And the railway today, how important is it to Esso? Les Cobbledick is a senior plant operative.
The operations of the bitumen plant, we get a train coming from Foley Refinery into Plymouth, and we eat the rail cars up, with burners, and when it's set at a certain temperature, then we pump it into our storage tanks, and then that gets delivered out by road tankers into quarries, which is a raw material, which is a byproduct from fuel, and the quarries use it to mix in with aggregate for the asphalt to be laid out onto the roads. The train comes from a place called Foley in Southampton, which is a big Esso refinery, and it comes down by night because it's a cheaper way of coming down rather than bringing it down by road. And also when the train does come down to Plymouth from Foley, if we haven't got a full capacity train of bitumen, they attach rail cars on the back, which is gas oil, which they either deliver into Lera station or they take it on down to Penzance. Their maximum train is 14 rail cars. Right, they deliver the train twice a week, which is on a Wednesday morning and a Saturday morning, and then they collect the empties on a Tuesday morning and a Friday morning. Yeah, I think the future is quite secure because I think railway delivery is a lot cheaper than what they can do it by road. Obviously because it's they can deliver up to 14 rail cars down in one go with one engine, whereas it would take 14 vehicles on the road to deliver the same amount, and that's why they can do it so cheap. I've been here 12 years, since 1988, and I cope with the early mornings quite reasonably well actually, because I was on the road for 5 years, and I could start any time from midnight till 5 o'clock in the morning.
The plant's Hudswell shunter is especially important to Andy at the moment.
I don't drive the train at the moment, but in a week's time I will be taking my course to drive the Hudswell.
And so our journey into rail history ends, but not before we once again travel back in time to that memorable day on the Turnchapel line in September of 1961. Aboard the train hauled by Southern Region class engine M7 number 30034 with many other enthusiasts was Dave Down, a railway enthusiast from Plymouth. It was a very special day for him for a number of reasons.
I was ecstatic going on it because it was the first time I'd ever been on a train of a line which was closing, and I was surprised to see how many people were interested enough to want to travel on that train, because the train of guards vans was very unusual to see. You normally just see one on the end of a freight and that was it. And on the progress out, everybody was keen with the camera, every shot they could possibly get. But virtually on the return, everybody took one shot leaving, and that was the end of it, because it didn't stop anywhere on the way back. It just came straight back. As a young child of a one-parent family, I used to travel to Jennycliff regularly, and I would travel on the train to Turnchapel for threepence. Most times returning either by bus or by ferry, so it was a three-way transport to and from the beach.
And Tony Pitcher's childhood recollections?
But then as I got a bit older, I used to go up and meet the train up on Plymstock Station, and Dad used to take me on the footplate, and of course I'd have the lovely boy over to Turnchapel and back, but very often he'd lift me up and I'd start push the lever over to start the engine away, so that was good fun. Then I recall things like coming from Friary Station, because we used to always take the train to town, and Lucas Terrace was always a bit of a laugh, especially with one of the guards that used to be on the train, because he had a bit of a stutter, and sometimes he'd say Lucas's Terrace, or if he couldn't get that out he'd say, anybody for yer, 'cause yer 'tis. I always thought that was funny.
No railway documentary can be complete without some technical information, the lack of which has drawn comment from our critics previously. Working locomotives on the Turnchapel line can be categorised into two main classes from the opening of the line to the end of passenger workings in 1951. The ex-LSR Class 02s were used mainly for passenger workings. And for goods, there were the B4s such as 102 Granville, seen here in SR livery at the Motive Power Depot in 1949, and in 1950 appearing as number 30102 in BR livery with its 1F classification. Notably, during the period from 1904 to 1914, for summertime working, LSWR Drummond steam motor cars lists number 1 and 2 were transferred from the Basingstoke to Alton Railway with carriages list numbers 4201 and 4202. A Class C14 220 tank made a rare appearance sometime during the period 1906 to 1917, after which it was loaned to the Ministry of Munitions in April of 1917. The loco, number 741, derived from a Drummond steam motor car, was converted to an 040 tank to improve rail adhesion in 1922. And during the period 1930 to 1933, the ex-London, Brighton and South Coast Railway Class D1 number 259 was used for push-pull work while the O2s were being modified. The only diesel multiple unit to travel the branch and certainly the only passenger train to enter Admiralty Wharves at Turnchapel was this Railway Enthusiast Club of Farnborough Special, which ran on the 11th of April 1959. It was DMU W51062 or Devon Rambler, and spent all day on various branch lines in South Devon before returning home. Class 02 number 30182 was commissioned on the 2nd of May 1959 by the Railway Correspondence and Travel Society as part of the Royal Albert Bridge Centenary celebrations. And as featured in the archive movie footage, Class M7 number 30034 was used on the last passenger trip in September of 1961. Now, in case I've left anything out, let Dave Down's expertise summarise details of the steam motive power units on the Turnchapel branch.
There would be the O2s, and that was 30182, 30183, 30194, 30201, 30232, 30225, and then there was the M7s, which were 30034, which was on the last train, 35, 36 and 37.
From Cattewater Junction, both LSWR and GWR ran along the same lines as far as Plymstock, the junction for Turnchapel and Yampton. In 1893, the Plymouth and Dartmoor Railway Company proposed a railway from Plymouth to Modbury in the South Hams. The line never did reach Modbury, stopping short at Yampton, opening on the 15th of January 1898. Stations between Plymstock and Yampton included Billicombe, Elberton Cross, Brixton and Steer Point. Travelling through some of the most beautiful countryside in the West, the story of this GWR branch is told in the documentary Memories of the Plymouth to Yampton Railway. We close on a montage of superb memories, including that last passenger trip to Turnchapel on the 30th of September 1961, from the archives of accomplished photographer Peter Gray.
Archive Films is constantly on the lookout for its next documentary celebrating the golden age of steam or trains of the past, and we need your help. If you have any old movie footage from the trains of yesteryear, please reach out to us. Preserve the magic of steam trains for generations to come. Please feel free to contact us via our website. Thank you.